I'm reading an article there in the Irish Times about a Kildare building site. It's a building site not a million miles from where we are here in Broadford in Kildare. The site is in Kilcock, and reading the article in the Irish Times is making me angry, and it's making me certainly form the conclusion, and I'll share it with you, that I wouldn't buy one of the properties that's being built here. And we'll discuss that later, and I may even tomorrow go just for the fun, for a spin on my moped, may go and have a look at the site. Site has been closed down by the Health and Safety Authority. The court order has been made by the High Court. The court order was made to close down this building site in Kilcock, which is about 10 miles from here. And the court order was made to reduce risk of injury or worse. Inspections of the development in Kilcock found, quote, severe deterioration in safety situation over multiple visits. One of the unusual features of this particular health and safety building situation is that complaints from the general public are a feature. And that would be unusual, quite frankly, because normally on a building site, builders, well, you're more concerned with inspectors coming around from the Health and Safety Authority. Generally, the general public are not going to have access to it, etc., etc. But in this particular site in Bridge Street in Kilcock, with which I'm familiar, the general public could see what was going on and actually made complaints. So it shows you how bad it was. Just reading the article there in the Irish Times, the report is by Colm Keena and Fiachra Gallagher. It's 4 blocks of apartments in Kilcock, County Kildare, and the work has stopped now because the Health and Safety Authority secured an order from the High Court for the site's immediate closure. The authority said that the High Court order was necessary to, quote, reduce the risk of injury or worse at the Mall Bridge Street. This was despite work on the site already being voluntarily stopped by the operators. The closure order for the site, which includes a protected structure, the Lions House pub, was secured on consent of the operator company. And the Lions House pub is a pub with which I'm familiar because I spent 1 year in Kilcock secondary school, and when I was there I used to get my lunch there in the Lions House pub, and used to get a sandwich and a bowl of soup. The order against Coon Allen Property Developments Limited followed complaints from the public, multiple inspections, and a site inspector coming to the view he could no longer rely on assurances from the company's principal, Aristides Georgiakis, court documents show. This is not a step we take lightly, the Health and Safety Authority said after the order was made on Wednesday under the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act 2005. But where there is a clear ongoing danger to workers' lives, we are legally and morally compelled to act. Planning files show that permission was granted in 2020 for 39 studios and apartments in a long-term build-to-rent residential development on the site with a shared accommodation development in the former pub. In an affidavit to the court, the Health and Safety Inspector Kevin Broderick said he first visited the site in August 2023 following a complaint from a member of the public. So it must have been pretty bad if members of the public were complaining. Among the matters noted was that many of the workers were not wearing safety helmets or high visibility vests, that shuttering supports for wet concrete were overhanging the public footpath on one block, and no protection was provided to members of the public passing by one of the blocks under construction which overhung the public footpath. So here you have a situation where this building, this putative building, is overhanging the public footpath and there's no protection for the public. Mr. Broderick, that's the Health and Safety Inspector, arrived at the site at 10:30 a.m. and was told that Mr. Georgiakis had the safety file and was on his way. When he arrived at 2:30 p.m, Mr. Georgiakis did not have personal protection equipment with him, the inspector told the court. He proffered several excuses for the deficiencies on site and appeared to blame Kildare County Council for same, said Mr. Broderick. A colleague, Owen Moylan, visited the site in June 2024 following the receipt of another complaint from the public. As a result, Mr. Moylan issued several prohibition notices. However, when the two inspectors visited the site the following month, they found work being carried out contrary to the notices. So here's a situation where notices have been served, work is not supposed to be going on, and the work just carried on. They decided that not only had the safety situation not improved, there had been a severe deterioration, Mr. Broderick said. Over the following period, there were various contacts with the company and parties working for it, and multiple visits to the site, Mr. Broderick told the court. In light of the persistent and repeated failure to comply with the applicable law, the authority is not satisfied that the assurances provided by Mr. Georgiakis, which are in any event inadequate, are sufficient, the inspector said. The latest annual report for this company, Kuhn Allen Property Developments of Longford Road, Mullingar, show that its directors and shareholders are Aristides, 76, in brackets, I presume that's his age, 76, Alexander, 45, and Philip Georgiakis, 42, all Canadian citizens with the same address in the United Arab Emirates. The company was incorporated in 2021, recorded a pre-tax profit of €5,150 in the year to the end of March 2024. There was no request or no response to a request to the company for comment. So you can draw your own conclusions about buying a property in that development. For example, if the attitude of the company, the directors, Mr. Georgiakis, is as it appears to be in terms of the health and safety, if that's the attitude to health and safety, what do you think is the attitude to building regulations, fire safety, stuff like that? I'm not saying you can draw the straight conclusion or correlation between this sort of sloppiness and the type of building that goes on. But let's call a spade a spade. Let's be honest here. If you saw somebody carrying on a building development in that way, in such a haphazard, slipshod, unprofessional, dangerous way, that the place is closed down, and Mr. Georgiakis comes along to meet the health and safety inspector with no personal protection equipment of his own, what conclusion would you draw about the quality of the build? What conclusion would you draw about the compliance with building regulations, fire safety, etc., etc.? I don't know. You can make that decision for yourself. Make up your own mind about that. I think it's fair to say, however, that your confidence wouldn't be emboldened or strengthened when you read a report like that. And I, for one, if I was in the market to buy an apartment or buy any sort of a property, I don't think I would be placing my trust in one of those. I don't know how you feel about it, but if you draw the reasonable conclusion, well, you can draw any conclusion you like, but you would have to draw some conclusion about the approach and the attitude of these directors to health and safety from the fact that they've been closed down. But you also might question whether that attitude would spill over into other things. For example, as I say, building regulations, the materials that go into it, and so forth. I know I, for one, wouldn't buy in it, but you know, each to his own, each person to his own. I might pop up that way tomorrow and have a look at the development just for to be clear myself on where it is. I have a good idea where it is. It's on Bridge Street there, and I actually had an office on Bridge Street the first time round with my solicitor's practice before I ran out of money. But I'd be interested, if the weather's good tomorrow, I might pop up there again in my Vespa just to have a look. But the damage is done now, I suppose, insofar as the Health and Safety Authority have closed down the site. And obviously the company have consented to it being closed down, but it is shocking in 2025 that people carry on building development with that sort of an attitude, that sort of a lax approach to health and safety, because ultimately it's employees, it's subcontractors, it's visitors to the site who are at risk. And in this day and age, to be carrying on or building a development with 2 or 3 blocks of apartments with employees or subcontractors with no safety equipment, no PPE, etc., is not acceptable. Anyway, I might take a look at it tomorrow. As I say, if the weather's good, it might pop up there.
I'm going to go into Kilcock just to have a look at this site and see exactly what is the story. See if there's anything that's obviously dangerous or whatever, but it'd be interesting just to see it. And obviously the High Court has closed it down, so we'll have a look at it there now. It's a nice day for a spin on the Vespa, so that's what I'm going to do. Site that was closed down was just across the road, and it is an awful good site in my view. I'm not a builder, although I did build. I am a solicitor, but Jesus, even to the unpracticed eye, this looks like a rough development. You can see the notices on the road or on the board across the street there. High Court, Wednesday, 16th of July, in the matter of Safety and Health and Welfare Work Act 2005, the Health and Safety Authority. Bottom line is the court has ordered that construction be prohibited here for the moment anyway. Here's the site here. You nearly know by looking at it that it leaves a lot to be desired. Very often on the building site you're able to ascertain the sort of building practices that are going on by the way materials are stored, how the site is secured and so on. And if you look in there, it is fairly haphazard, to put it mildly. I presume the concerns or complaints from the general public were from walking along this street here, but I don't know that. This is from a different, or this is a third block in at the back. There's 2 blocks there, well there's one there, there's one there, and then there's this third one. And if you look at the scaffolding there, it doesn't look the May West now to me. Concrete balconies there, block of apartments. concrete balconies. That green stuff now on the building, in fairness, is insulation, but the whole thing looks fairly shabby and fairly slipshod, quite frankly. Anyway, the High Court has closed it down. That's the site that's been closed down. 3 boxes of apartments, and there's a lot of money gone into that there already. Whether it's ever realised now or not is another thing. Publicity won't do it any good, that's for sure, but Jesus, it looks rough. Even, as I say, to my own practiced eye, and I did a bit of building in my time, but this looks fairly rough now. Anyway, that's the development that's been closed down by the High Court. I'm going to head home now.